Hey, altruistic well-wishers and constructive critics are your dear and near will find better. With social activist and good-hearted preacher Professor S. Suresh back with a sheer ecstasy for my 108th video on Unveil of publication on YouTube today, 11th November 2020, Wednesday. I have selected discrimination at work and its effect on work performance. For performance today. Discrimination is the act of making unjustified distinctions between human beings based on the groups, classes, or other categories to which they are perceived to belong. People may be discriminated on the basis of race, gender, age, or sexual orientation, as well as other categories. Discrimination especially occurs when individuals or groups are unfairly treated in a way which is worse than other people treated on the basis of actual or perceived membership in certain groups or social subcategories. It involves restricting members of one group from opportunities or privileges that are available to members of another group. Discriminatory traditions, policies, ideas, practices, and laws exist in many countries and institutions in all parts of the world, including territories where discrimination is generally looked down upon. In some places, attempts such as quotas have been used to benefit those who are believed to be current or past victims of discrimination. These attempts have been met with controversy and have sometimes been called reverse discrimination. The term discriminate appeared in the early 17th century in the English language. It is from Latin discriminat, distinguish between from the verb discriminar from discriminant, distinction from the verb discerner. Since the American Civil War, the term discrimination generally evolved in American English usage as an understanding of prejudicial treatment of an individual based solely on the race, later generalized as membership in a certain socially undesirable group or social category. Before this sense of the word became almost universal, it was a synonym for discernment, tact, and cultures as in taste and discrimination. Generally, a laudable attribute to discriminate against, being commonly disparaged. The word discrimination derives from Latin, where the word discriminate means to separate, to distinguish, to make a distinction. Based on realistic conflict theory and social identity theory, Rubin and Houston have highlighted a distinction among three types of discrimination. Realistic competition is driven by self-interest and is aimed at obtaining material resources. Example, food, territory, customers for the in-group. Example, favoring an in-group in order to obtain more resources for its members, including the self. Social competition is driven by the need for self-esteem and is aimed at achieving the positive social status for the in-group relative to comparable outgroups. Example, favoring an in-group in order to make it better than an out-group. Consensual discrimination is driven by the need for accuracy and reflects stable and legitimate intergroup status hierarchies. Example, favoring a high status in-group because it is high status. The United Nations UN stance on discrimination includes a statement discriminatory behaviors take many forms, but they all involve some form of exclusion or rejection. International bodies, United Nations Human Rights Council work towards helping ending discrimination around the world. Discrimination against people with disabilities in favor of people who are not is called albinism or disabilism. Disability discrimination, which treats non-disabled individuals as a standard of normal living, results in public and private places and services, educational settings, and social services that are built to serve standard people, thereby excluding those with various disabilities. Studies have shown that disabled people not only need employment in order to be provided with the opportunity to earn a living, but they also need employment in order to sustain their mental health and well-being. Work fulfills a number of basic needs for an individual, such as collective purpose, social contact, status, and activity. A person with a disability is often found to be socially isolated, and work is one way to reduce these are isolation. In the US, the Americans with the Disabilities Act mandates a provision of equality of access to both buildings and services and is paralleled by similar acts in other countries such as the Equality Act 2010 in the UK. Disabled friendly places. Diversity of language is protected and respected by most nations who value cultural diversity. However, people are sometimes subjected to different treatment because the preferred language is associated with a particular group, class, or category. Notable examples are the anti-French sentiment in the US, as well as anti-Cuban sentiment in Canada, targeting people who speak the French language. Commonly, the preferred language is just another attribute of separate ethnic groups. Discrimination exists if there is prejudicial treatment against a person or a group of people who either do or do not speak a particular language or languages. Language discrimination is suggested to be labeled linguism or logosism. Anti-discriminatory and inclusive efforts to accommodate persons who speak different languages or cannot have fluency in the country's predominant or official language is bilingualism, such as official documents in two languages and multiculturalism in more than two languages. Discrimination based on a person's name may also occur, with researchers suggesting that this form of discrimination is present based on man's name's meaning, its pronunciation, its uniqueness, its gender affiliation, and its racial affiliation. Research has further shown that real-world recruiters spend an average of just 6 seconds reviewing each resume before making their initial fit or no fit screen out decision, and that a person's name is one of the 6 things they focus on most. France has made illegal to view a person's name on a resume when screening for the initial list of most qualified candidates. Great Britain, Germany, Sweden, and the Netherlands have also experimented with the name blind summary process. Some apparent discrimination may be explained by other factors such as name frequency. The effect of name discrimination based on a name's fluency is subtle, small, and subject to significantly changing norms. Discrimination on the basis of nationality is usually included in employment laws. It is sometimes referred to as bound together with the racial discrimination, although it can be separate. It may vary from laws that stop refusals of hiring based on nationality, asking questions regarding the origin, to prohibitions of firing, forced retirement, compensation and pay, etc. Based on nationality. Discrimination on the basis of nationality may show as a level of acceptance. In a sport or work team, regarding new team members and employees who differ from the nationality of a majority of team members, the Gulf Cooperation Council (GCC) states the workplace preferential treatment is given to full citizens, even though many of them lack experience or motivation to do the job. State benefits are also generally available for citizens only. Even for purchase of property and all that, you must be a natural citizen, born and brought up there. Westerners might also get paid more than other expatriates. Racial and ethnic discrimination differentiates individuals on the basis of real and perceived racial and ethnic differences and leads to various forms of ethnic penalty. It can also refer to the belief that groups of humans possess different behavioral traits corresponding to physical appearance and can be divided based on the superiority of one race over another. It may also mean prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against other people because they are of a different race or ethnicity. Modern variants of racism are often based in social perceptions of biological differences between people. These views can take the form of social actions, practices, or beliefs, or political systems in which different races are ranked as inherently superior or inferior to each other based on perceived shared inheritable traits, abilities, or qualities. It has been official government policy in several countries such as South Africa during the apartheid era. Discriminatory policies towards ethnic minorities includes the race-based discrimination against ethnic Indians and Chinese in Malaysia. After the Vietnam War, many Vietnamese refugees moved to Australia and the US where they faced discrimination. Regional or geographic discrimination is a form of discrimination that is based on the region in which a person lives or the region in which a person was born. It differs from national discrimination because it may not be based on national borders of the country in which the victim lives. Instead, it is based on prejudice against a specific region of one or more countries. Examples include discrimination against Chinese people who are born in regions of the countryside that are far away from cities that are located within China. Discrimination against Americans who are from the southern or northern regions of the US. It is often accompanied by discrimination that is based on accent, dialect, cultural differences. Religious discrimination is valuing or treating people or groups differently because of what they do or what do not believe in, or because of their feeling towards a given religion. For instance, the Jewish population of Germany and indeed a large portion of Europe was subjected to discrimination under the Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party between 1933 and 1945. They were forced to live in ghettos, wear an identifying star of David on their clothes, and sent to concentration and death camps in rural Germany and Poland, where they were to be tortured and killed, all because of the Jewish religion. A lot of Polish were killed in mass. Many laws, most prominently the Nuremberg laws of 1935, separated those of Jewish faith as supposedly inferior to the Christian population. Restrictions on the types of occupations that Jewish people could hold were imposed by Chinese authorities. Local rulers and church officials closed many professions to religious Jews, pushing them into marginal roles that were considered socially inferior, such as tax and rent collecting and money lending, occupations that were only tolerated as a necessary evil. The number of Jews who were permitted to reside in different places was limited. They were concentrated in ghettos and banned from owning land. This practice exists in South Africa even now. Certain places, certain areas are reserved only for the whites. Blacks are not supposed to even live there. It is racial discrimination. Blacks were killed also, especially in South Africa. In Saudi Arabia, non-Muslims are not allowed to publicly practice their religions and they cannot enter Mecca and Medina. Furthermore, private non-Muslim religious gatherings must be raided by the religious police. In a 1979 consultation on the issue, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights defined religious discrimination in relation to the civil rights which are guaranteed by the 14th Amendment, whereas religious civil liberties such as the right to hold or not to hold a religious belief are essential for freedom of religion in the U.S. as secured by the First Amendment. Religious discrimination occurs when someone is denied equal protection under the law, equality of status under the law, equal treatment in the administration of justice, and equality of opportunity and access to employment, education, housing, public services and facilities, and public accommodation because of the exercise of the right to religious freedom. I don't know how many of you know that there is a sect amongst Christians called the Jehovah's Witness. It is banned in so many countries, including US. Is it not an infringement on the rights of a normal human being? Sexism is a form of discrimination based on a person's sex or gender. It has been linked to stereotypes and gender roles and may include the belief that one sex or gender is intrinsically superior to another. The extreme sexism is foster sexual harassment, rape, and other forms of sexual violence. Gender discrimination may encompass sexism and is discrimination towards people based on the gender identity or the gender or sex differences. Gender discrimination is especially defined in terms of workplace inequality. It may arise from social or cultural customs and norms. Intersex persons experience discrimination due to innate and typical sex characteristics. Multiple jurisdictions now provide individuals on grounds of intersex status or sex characteristics. South Africa was the first country to explicitly add intersex to registration as part of the attribute of sex. Australia was the first country to add an independent attribute of intersex status. Malta was the first to adopt a broader framework of sex characteristics, though through legislation that also entered modifications to the sex characteristics of minors undertaken for social and cultural reasons. Global efforts such as the UN Sustainable Development Goal 5 are also aimed at ending all forms of discrimination on the basis of gender and sex. One sexual orientation is a predilection for homosexuality, heterosexuality, or bisexuality. You know about LGBT, lesbians, bisexuals, gay, transsexuals. Like most minority groups, homosexuals and bisexuals are vulnerable to prejudice and discrimination from the majority group. They may experience hatred from others because of their sexuality. In terms for such hatred based upon one's sexual orientation is often called homophobia. Many continue to hold negative feelings towards those with non-heterosexual orientations and will discriminate against people who have them or are thought to have them. People of the uncommon sexual orientations also experience discrimination. Employment discrimination based on sexual orientation varies by country. Revealing a lesbian sexual orientation by means of mentioning a engagement in a rainbow organization, Rainbow, that is for LGBT, or by mentioning one's partner's name, lowers employment opportunities in Cyprus and Greece, but overall, it has no negative effect in Sweden and Belgium. In the latter country, even a positive effect of revealing a lesbian sexual orientation is found for women at their fertile ages. Number of countries, especially those in the Western world, have passed measures to alleviate discrimination against sexual minorities, including laws against anti-gay hate crimes and workplace discrimination. Some have also legalized same-sex marriage or civil unions in order to grant same-sex couples the same protections and benefits as opposite-sex couples. In 2011, the UN passed its first resolution recognizing LGBT, as I said, LGBT rights. Drug use discrimination is the unequal treatment people experience because of the drugs they use. People who use or have used illicit drugs may face discrimination in employment, welfare, housing, child custody, and travel, in addition to imprisonment, asset forfeiture, and in some cases forced labor, torture, and execution. Though often prejudicially stereotyped as deviants and misfits, most drug users are well adjusted and productive members of society. Drug prohibitions may have been partly motivated by racism and other prejudice against minorities, and racial disparities have been found to exist in the enforcement and prosecution of drug laws. Narcotics. Discrimination due to illicit drug use was the most commonly reported type of discrimination among blacks and Latinos. In a 2003 study of minority drug users in New York City, double to triple that due to race, people who use legal drugs such as tobacco and prescription medicines may also face discrimination. The USA government policy, which is known as affirmative action, was instituted in order to encourage employers and universities to seek out and accept groups such as African Americans and women who have been subject to discrimination for a long time. You know what happened in the US? Black Lives Matter. Some attempts at anti-discrimination have been criticized as reverse discrimination. In particular, minority quota problem systems such as affirmative action may discriminate against members of a dominant or majority group of members of other minority groups. In its opposition to race preferences, the American Civil Rights Institute, what Connolly stated, there is nothing positive, affirmative, or equal about affirmative action programs that give preference to some groups based on race. Important UN documents addressing discrimination include the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, is a declaration adopted by the UN General Assembly on December 10, 1948. It states that everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. The International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, ICERORD, is a UN convention. The convention commits its members to elimination of racial discrimination. The convention was adopted and opened for signature by the UN General Assembly on December 21, 1965, and entered into force on January 4, 1969. The Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, is an international treaty adopted in 1979 by the UN General Assembly. Described as an international bill of rights for women, it came into force on September 3, 1981. The Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities is an international human rights instrument treaty of the UN. Parties to the convention are required to promote, protect, and ensure the full employment of human rights by persons with disabilities and ensure that they enjoy full equality under the law. The text was adopted by the UN General Assembly on December 13, 2006, and opened for signature on March 30, 2007. Following ratification by the 20th party, came into force on May 3, 2008. Social theories such as egalitarianism assert that social equality should prevail. In some societies, including most developed countries, each individual's civil rights includes the right to be free from government-sponsored social discrimination. Due to a belief in the capacity to perceive pain or suffering shared by all animals, abolitionists or vegan egalitarianism maintains that the interests of every individual, regardless of species, warrants equal consideration with the interests of humans, and that not doing so is speciesist. Employment discrimination is a form of discrimination based on race, gender, religion, national origin, physical or mental disability, age, sexual orientation, and gender identity by employers. Earnings differentials or occupational orientation differentiation, where differences in pay come from differences in qualifications or responsibility, should not be confused with employment discrimination. Discrimination can be intended and involve disparate treatment of a group to be unintended or be unintended yet create disparate impact for a group. In neoclassical economics theory, labor market discrimination is defined as a different treatment of two equally qualified individuals on account of their theory. Labor market discrimination is defined as a different treatment of two equally qualified individuals on account of their gender, race, age, religion, etc. Discrimination is harmful since it affects the economic outcomes of equally productive workers directly and indirectly through feedback effects. Darity and Mason 1998 summarized that the standard approach used in identifying employment discrimination is to isolate group productivity differences, education, work experience, differences in outcomes such as earnings, job placement that cannot be attributed to worker qualifications or attributed to discriminatory treatment. In the non-neoclassical view, discrimination is the main source of inequality in the labor market and is seen in the persistent gender and racial earnings disparity in the US. Non-neoclassical economists defines discrimination more broadly than neoclassical economists. For example, the feminist economist Deborah Figard defines labor market discrimination as a multidimensional interaction of economic, social, political, and cultural forces in both the workplace and the family, resulting in different outcomes involving pay, employment, and status. That is, discrimination is not only about measurable outcomes but also about unquantifiable consequences. It is important to note that the process is as important as outcomes. Furthermore, gender norms are embedded in labor markets and shape employer preferences as well as worker preferences. Therefore, it is not easy to separate discrimination from productivity related inequality. Employment discrimination can have individual, group, and organizational consequences. Individual perceived discrimination in the workplace has been linked to negative physical symptoms. In a study from 1977 to 1982, women who perceived they were experiencing discrimination were 50% more likely to have a physical limitation. In 1989, compared to those who did not perceive discriminatory experiences, there have been two common ways of reacting to discrimination: emotion-focused coping and problem-focused coping. In the former, individuals protect their self-esteem by attributing any discrepancies in hiring or promotion to discrimination instead of reflecting on their own potential shortcomings. In the later, individuals attempt to change aspects of themselves that cause them to be discriminated against to prevent themselves from future discrimination. Some common examples are obese people, losing weight, or mentally ill people seeking therapy. This approach can only be sought out when the point of discrimination is not unchangeable, like race or age. Group, unlike the individual level, discrimination at the group level can induce feelings of fear and mistrust within the group discriminated, which often results in inhibited performance. The effects are most commonly seen with age, disability, and race and ethnicity. Age discrimination is prevalent because companies have to consider how long older workers will stay and the cost of their health insurance accordingly. When companies let these insecurities affect the treatment of older workers, hostile work environment, demotions, lower employment rates, these older workers who perceive this discrimination are 59% more likely to leave their current job. Though there are currently anti-discrimination laws and disability, namely the Americans with the Disabilities Act, discrimination against weight is still prevalent. What makes, especially on airlines, for the airline attendance job, they look for thin females only, thin people. If the person is obese, they are not able to get the selection. Okay. What makes the issue complicated is the fact that obesity only counts as a disability when someone is morbidly obese, 100% over their ideal body weight, or obese, 20% over their ideal body weight as a result of psychological conditions. Showing that only 0.5% of the people in the US are morbidly obese, 99% of 99.95%, 99.5% of the obese individuals have the burden to prove their excess weight comes from psychological causes. They have to be protected from anti-discrimination law. Another body of people that face widespread group discrimination are racial minorities, mainly blacks and Hispanics. They are rated as less favorable than white applicants, and this kind of prejudice makes them suffer from increased role ambiguity, role conflict, and work tension, as well as decreased organizational commitment and job satisfaction. This is particularly in the US. Further analysis and statistics of the discrimination they face are discussed below by discrimination exists in Australia also. Aborigines, natives are discriminated. Similarly, in New Zealand, they don't like foreigners. It leads to racial killings also so many times. What we call racial killing, genocide. Organizational companies heard from their own discriminatory practices on a legal, economic, and reputational risk basis. In 2005 alone, 146,000 charges of discrimination were filed. Discrimination litigation can be very expensive when taking into account the time spent in court and the outcome of the ruling, where the possibility of settlement money comes into play, as well as hiring, promotion, back pay, or reinstatement for the prosecutor. Public cases of discrimination, regardless of being taken to court, have a negative effect on a company's reputation, which typically decreases sales. Another viewpoint on discrimination affecting profit is that companies may not be using their employees they discriminate to the best of their ability. It is affecting the organization only directly and indirectly. Some see these employees as an untapped niche, a small specialist field or group that has not been used to its full potential, especially since diversity management is positively correlated with corporate financial performance. US anti-discrimination laws. Before the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 in the US, employment discrimination was legal and widely practiced. The newspaper ads for various jobs indicated racial and gender discrimination explicitly and implicitly. These behaviors were all built on the assumption that women and blacks were inferior. This is in US. At the turn of the 21st century, discrimination is still practiced, but to a lesser degree and less overtly. The progress of the evident discrimination problem is visible. However, the effect of past is persistent in the economic outcomes, such as historical wage settings that influence current wages. Women are not only underrepresented in the high rank and high paid jobs, but they are also overrepresented in the secondary and lower paid jobs. The interviewers' personal law, wage data, and confidential employment records of salaries, along with other evidence, show gender segregation and its effects on the labor market. Although there is some inevitable occupational segregation based on people's preferences, discrimination does exist. Moreover, persistence of discrimination remains even after government intervention. There is a decline in the wage gap due to three reasons. Male wages decreased and women's wages increased. Secondly, the human capital gap between the two genders and experience gap have been closing. Thirdly, legal pressures decreased discrimination, but there is still inequality in the national economy of the US. The correlation of Civil Rights Act and decrease in discrimination suggests the Act served its purpose. Therefore, it is correct to say leaving discrimination to diminish to the competitive markets is wrong, as Becker claimed. In 1961, Kennedy issued an executive order calling for a presidential commission on the status of women. In 1963, Equal Pay Act, which required the employers to pay the wages to men and women for the same work qualifications, was passed. In 1964, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, with the exception bona fide occupational qualifications, was accepted by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, responsible to check whether the Equal Pay Act and Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 were followed. The Title VII of the Civil Rights Act was first written to forbid employment discrimination. Initially, it prohibited discrimination on the basis of race, religion, and national origin. However, inclusion of the sex accepted last minute. The Title VII addresses both the disparate impact and disparate treatment. In 1965, Executive Order 11246 was passed, and in 1967 it was changed to include sex, which prohibited employment discrimination by all employers with federal contracts and subcontracts. In addition, it makes sure affirmative action takes place. In 1986, sexual harassment was accepted as illegal, and with the Supreme Court's decision. In 1998, the largest sexual harassment settlement was negotiated with $34 million to be paid to female workers of Mitsubishi. As a result of these government policies, occupational segregation decreased. The gender wage gap started to get smaller after the 1980s. Whatever I'm talking about mostly pertains to US. To get smaller after the 1980s, most likely due to indirect feedback effects, which took time, but an immediate increase in the earnings of blacks were observed in 1964. However, the laws still do not control discrimination fully in terms of hiring, promotion, and training programs, etc. Affirmative action. The Executive Order 11246, which is enforced with the Office of Federal Contract Compliance, again US, is an attempt to eliminate the gap between the advantaged and disadvantaged groups on account of gender and race. It requires contractors to observe the employment patterns. If there is underrepresentation of women and minorities, codes and timetables are created to employ more of the disadvantaged groups on account of gender and race. The pros and cons of affirmative action are being discussed. Some believe discrimination does not exist at all, or even it does, prohibiting it is enough, and affirmative action is not needed. Some agree that some affirmative action is needed, but they have considerations regarding the use of goals and timetables, as they may be too strict. Some think that strong affirmative action is needed, but they are worried if there will be really sincere effort to hire the qualified individuals from the vulnerable groups. Minimum wage can be used as a tool to combat discrimination as well as to promote equality. One approach that mitigates discrimination by emphasizing skills in workforce is workforce development programs. Employment discrimination happens when an employee or job candidate is treated unfairly because of age, disability, genetic information, national origin, pregnancy, race, or skin color, religion, or sex. In addition, US federal laws against discrimination protect workers from retaliation for asserting their rights to be free from employment discrimination. It is illegal to discriminate based on these protected characteristics when hiring or in the workplace, because it is illegal to discriminate in any facet of employment. Workplace discrimination extends beyond hiring and firing to discrimination that can happen to someone who is currently employed. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 makes it unlawful to discriminate in hiring, discharge, promotion, referral, and other facets of employment on the basis of color, race, religion, sex, or national origin. This is enforced by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. In addition to the US Supreme Court has ruled that Civil Rights Act provision banning discrimination in the workplace protects LGBTQ employees from being fired because of their sexual orientation. Federal contractors and subcontractors must take affirmative action to guarantee equal employment opportunity without regard to race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or national origin. Executive Order 11246 is enforced with the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs. Harassment is a form of discrimination. As with the discrimination, there are different types of harassment, including unwelcome behavior by a co-worker, manager, client, or anyone else in the workplace that is based on race, religion, color, sex, including pregnancy, nationality, age, 40 or older, disability, or genetic information. Workplace discrimination occurs when an individual is discriminated against due to any number of factors. In addition to the reasons listed above, employees and job applicants can also be discriminated against because of the relationship to another person. Employment discrimination could occur in any number of situations, including stating or suggesting preferred candidates in job advertisement, excluding potential employees during recruitment, denying certain employees compensation or benefits, paying equally qualified employees in the same position different salaries, discriminating when assigning disability leave, maternity leave, or retirement options, denying or disrupting the use of company facilities, discrimination when existing promotions when issuing promotions or layoffs. The hostile work environment is created when harassment or discrimination interferes with an employee's work performance or creates a difficult or offensive work environment for an employee or group of employees because of discrimination. 5 ways to reduce workplace discrimination. Documentation and treating all employees the same. Have the person who hired the employee fire the employee. Training, company policies when hiring, stick to job requirements. Discrimination exists in all walks of life. Showing favoritism and nepotism at work is also a form of discrimination. India is a country of Hindus. One particular community tries to dominate the others. I don't like to mention the name of the community. All of us are aware of slavery, bonded labor system, prevalent even today in India, lower wages for females, especially in construction work, child labor, glass ceiling. Glass ceiling. Females, however smart they are, they cannot reach the top positions. But now it's all changing. Racial discrimination even in developed countries like US, New Zealand, Australia, India. India is not a developed country, developing. Religious discrimination based on ethnicity, skin color, age, disability, caste, community are very common at workplaces, even in educational institutes. Untouchability still exists in Indian villages, even in usage of natural resources like water, infrastructural facilities like roads, places of worship, eateries, etc. Just laws alone will never suffice. They should be strictly enforced and punishment should be very severe for the perpetrators. Our governments claim that there is no differentiation, but in all application forms, mandatory information required are religion, caste, community, native place, etc. For admission in any education institute, eligibility criteria should be academic qualification and grades, of course. Similarly, for employment, the selection criteria should be academic qualification, work experience, and skills pertaining to the job appropriate. Are there any criteria for the politicians except age? Of course, they need to be white liars, involved in crimes, looting money generated in various ways for public welfare. Are there any criteria to be a businessman or woman? Other than you should know how to cheat the living. Most of the other fields, person needs to have certain academic qualification, experience, skills, except politics and business. Educated people should be the administrators, business tycoons, and uneducated should be the subordinates, employees. When is it likely to happen? If you can predict, forecast, let me know, guys. Okay, I want to wind up with a positive note. Discrimination has given us Mahatma Gandhi. He was a barrister. He went to UK, South Africa, he experienced discrimination. After that, he started, fighting for the rights and all that. That's why we got Mahatma Gandhi. Otherwise, he would have been just Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. That's a positive. Okay. There is good in something bad also. Debates, discussion on open-ended topics like this can go on forever. Now, let me pull the plug here. We'll meet again real soon with another interesting topic. Some of the statements used expressed are solely mine, based on limited knowledge gained over 6 decades of first-hand experience. Always watch these videos with the closed caption, subtitles for absolute 100% comprehension as per my sincere recommendation zillion times so far. I know I rushed through to complete the presentation within 20 minutes maximum. It's a time limit that I have set myself to retain the viewer's attention as of now. I know very well that I am exceeding this time limit since I make honest attempts to cover the selected topic more elaborately in depth, including so many intricate fine details referring a wide variety of sources, in particular Wikipedia, quite extensively, that you can make out, because most of the examples are about things that have happened in US, the laws, whatever. Besides articles and books published recently. Besides, of course, I sprinkle my own salt and pepper and season it with my personal experiences so far in my life and also intuition. Stay at home as much as possible to maintain social distancing attributed to pandemic, novel COVID-19, and prolong your lifespan. Lead a healthy life. God alone can put a stop to natural and unnatural events. Yeah, pandemics are not showing any differentiation. They are not discriminating. Whether it's a rich person, poor person, white, black, Hispanic, Indian, Chinese, it is affecting everybody the same way. It's good. It's nature. And naturally, maybe biowar and cyberwar events like pandemics, which may lead to apocalypse and extinction of all sentient species on Earth and for no fault of others. Reverse discrimination is also bad. It is happening, especially in India. That is what we call as a reservation system in educational institutes for admission, as well as for placement, especially in government organization. That is also wrong. Reverse discrimination. They were discriminated sometime back in history. Now they are been showing some favoritism. That is wrong. Rest in peace and harmony.